Welcome back, guys. This is the Butt and Breneman Show. I'm Jake Butt. He's Adam Breneman, and we were 0-2 on our pick last weekend, Ohio State, Penn State. So we have to address that. We have to talk about it. Adam, I know you did a great breakdown on your Twitter, so for those that are interested, go look up Adam Breneman on Twitter, and you're going to see some of the details and the how and the why things happen. But I just kind of wanted to, big picture, start with your takeaways from the game.
There's a lot. It was disappointing for Penn State fans as a guy that played at Penn State. Disappointing, 'cause as we talked about on last week's show, Jake, it felt like for the first time in a while that Penn State was close to getting over the hump of beating Ohio State. And all the signs pointed to this being the year that could get it done. Ohio State looked more vulnerable than they've ever been, than they've been recently, and Penn State looked like the more complete team for the first half of the season.
Yeah.
That was not the case on Saturday. I think at the end of the day, what we saw was the better team and the more talented team won. And their players made plays when they had to, and Penn State's did it. So there's a bunch of things we can dive into. I think the first storyline, Jake, that I look at is how much Ohio State has dominated Penn State in the wide receiver recruiting in the last 5 years. Brian Hartline, Ohio State's wide receiver coach, has just ran the table and gotten everyone to go to Ohio State. And Penn State struggled recruiting wide receivers. Coach Franklin fired their wide receivers coach this offseason because of that issue. He developed a lot of talent on the field, but was not landing the big recruits. Penn State tried to get a transfer this offseason. They ended up getting Dante Cephas, who has hardly done anything this season. Imagine if one of those transfers would have been the Coleman kid from Florida State, or if they could have landed one of these big players. You think about a guy like Julian Fleming from Ohio State, who was a Pennsylvania kid, committed to Penn State, flipped to Ohio State. They lost him. He'd be wide receiver 1 at Penn State right now and their best playmaker. The recruiting matters, and down the stretch, on third down, Penn State's wide receivers couldn't get separation. No one made a big play when they needed it. And Marvin Harrison Jr., when everyone knew he was getting the football, still found a way to make plays. That to me is the high-level story of the game.
I think that was the difference, and I believe Joel Klatt made the point on the broadcast is, hey, like these teams are pretty evenly matched, but the difference is Ohio State had Marvin Harrison Jr. And I think really the context of it with Ibuka being out and TreVeyon Henderson being out, like everyone knew McCord's looking for 18. And yet the dude's so special you can't quite stop it. One of my big takeaways, and I feel this is important because – when you say the word vulnerable, that's a word that I've heard and I've used myself when it comes to the Buckeyes. But as I'm thinking about it, I'm like, man, are they really? Are they really? Because I think we say vulnerable because they're not just sleepwalking to 45 points a game and 500 yards and a Heisman-level quarterback. But wherever they are from that CJ Stroud-led Buckeye offense to where it is right now, the defense has made up ground because of the strides they've taken. It just looks differently this year. I think I want to give a massive amount of credit to Ryan Day and Jim Doles and the leaders on this defense for taking that step because they were challenged this offseason and they've rung the bell. Ohio State there's multiple ways to win a championship. Ohio State's recipe this year to a Big Ten championship or a national championship, the lead story will be the defense, and that was proven again this weekend. I think another takeaway, and your breakdown does a good job of this, and when you look at it, so what is play calling? Well, you have a whole week to scout. It's not just calling a play in the moment. You also have to find ways. How do you get a linebacker on Marvin Harrison Jr.? How do you get him in advantageous positions pre-snap with personnel, formation, motions, and shifts? Ryan Day did a phenomenal job of getting his guy in advantageous positions. And I think that's a piece an area where Penn State struggled because to me, Drew Aller, I think he needs time. They don't have time. So that's the paradox. He needs some time. He's a young quarterback that's developing. So with that in mind, I think the challenge would be for Coach Yurcich and Franklin is to find ways to scheme him easy completions to get him settled into the game, particularly in the big games. And, he's emotional after the game. I like it because I see a guy that cares a lot and understands it. And he talked about the veterans. So I know you've been close with him as well.
I do think, one, Drew Aller had a lot of pressure in that game. A lot of people in the media, including you and I, Jake, put a lot of pressure on him and said that this was his time. And at the end of the day, he's a first-year starter. I feel for him. It was hard to watch his post-game interview and how emotional he was. And the reality is he's going to have to deal with this now for the rest of the season. When they go to play Ohio State next year, he's going to have to deal with it. But the great ones find a way to overcome. A lot of great players had moments like that in their career. I do think after watching all the film and looking at the third downs and looking at Penn State's offense, there were plays to be made on the field. There were calls that were the right calls in the right moments against the right coverage. I will say, at the end of the day, though, it is Mike Yurcich's job and James Franklin's job to make sure his team executes the job, the play call. So we can sit here and say they made the right call, but clearly there was a disconnect along the way where they didn't execute on anything. It seemed like, Jake, on third down, something went wrong every single play. They couldn't execute a third down. One play it was a run ID. One play it was a protection. One play the receiver didn't get open. One play Aller threw a terrible pass. I mean, one play he fired it to Theo Johnson for a first. I mean, like there's every single time there was something that was wrong. Another topic or theme I saw in the game was Ohio State in the second half. Jake, we saw first half Penn State could run the football. They had a couple explosive runs in the first half. The second half, Ohio State made the right call. They were already loading the box in the first half. Second half, they went all out zero most of that second half. I mean, they said, Jim Knowles said, you're not going to beat us throwing the football. We know you're not, so we're going to load the box. And they were giving Penn State fits in the run game from a hat standpoint. They didn't have enough hats on multiple plays. Then also, there were plays that should have been blocked that they weren't IDing right as an offensive line. Multiple third down calls where the safety came in the box, and they should have been pushing the inside zone to the safety in the box. They just weren't blocking the front side. Yeah. You know, the safety was becoming the front side backer, right? He was becoming the Sam linebacker. You know how the ID works. Like that run game communication is so important. But when you bring the safety down so late, like Ohio State was doing, and he becomes the seventh man in the box, it gets hard to ID, and they were giving them fits in the run game all day.
The other solution would be to motion your receiver down and crack block. You know, whatever it is, however you get there. You know, maybe the O-line didn't have a push call in. Well, then it's got to be on the receiver and the quarterback or the offensive play calling to get the receiver down in the box. And here's the thing too is, you're right. But I still want to give credit to Jim Knowles in this Ohio State defense. I still want to give a lot of credit to them because, hey, man, they ran zero versus Michigan last year, and Michigan was able to exploit. There is a risk to running zero if you're not disciplined, because if you can break through that initial wall, all of a sudden, that's where the explosives happen. The guys played extremely disciplined. Shoot, we didn't even mention Denzel Burke didn't play. I mean, that dude's one of the best defenders in the conference, and they still answered the bell. So I give so much credit to that Ohio State defense. I had a chance to cover them, week 2 when they were playing Youngstown State. And I was just thinking about themes I could talk about. And I just remember growing up in Columbus, the silver bullet defense. I mean, I'm talking dudes flying around and not just tackling you, hitting you. Disciplined, suffocating, hard-nosed, quality Big Ten defense. That's where they're at this year, man. This is one of the better defenses in recent history.
And I thought, too, you make a good point. So much of the conversation around me right now is what went wrong with Penn State. Ohio State, and James Franklin said this, I mean, Ohio State's one of the best teams in the country. I think we saw 2 of the best defenses in the country on Saturday between the 2 of them. Jim Knowles, the creativity with the play calling. I just talked about how they went zero all the time, but that's not entirely true. There were multiple times where they showed zero, and it looked like they're bringing pressure. I think it was a 3rd down and 5 or 3rd down and 7. And everything tells you that Ohio State's going to bring zero. They're going to blitz, and they go drop 8 and only rush 3 guys. Drop all the guys in the coverage. It confuses Aller, and he ends up throwing the ball away, and they get another 3rd down stop. So Knowles did a phenomenal job of not just attacking the weakness of Penn State and making the receivers win, which they didn't, but a phenomenal job of mixing things up and keeping Aller uncomfortable. There wasn't one moment in that game where I thought Drew Aller looked comfortable playing out there. He just did it. Yeah. And that's as much of a testament to Jim Knowles and Ohio State as it is a knock on the young quarterback.
And really, when you show pressure and drop out of it, all that is the mind games, the game within the game, and it's particularly important and beneficial to do it against a young quarterback in Drew Aller. So again, it's credit to Jim Knowles, credit to Ryan Day, credit to Kyle McCord. Look, his quarterback rating, I want to say, or production or whatever that number is, it's 160 plus right now. He's got a 12-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. It's crazy how we could say it. Maybe it doesn't look like C.J. Stroud he threw one of the most beautiful footballs I've seen from any quarterback. So McCord I wouldn't call it just a beautiful football throw, but the numbers are there, man. He's productive.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you and get your thoughts on. There's a lot of talk in the Penn State community right now about Nick Singleton and Katron Allen and how you create touches for them. You know, those two guys combined, I think, for like 18 touches on Saturday, both of them. They're the two best players on Penn State's offense. What did you see? Any thoughts on how they use those guys? Or really, obviously they didn't use them enough, but how do you scheme up ways for those two guys to get the ball? I didn't think Penn State did a good enough job getting their best playmakers the ball in space.
It's a great question, and it's a great chance to kind of look under the hood, because you say, well, man, we need to get him the ball. Well, we got to run the ball.
Yeah.
Well, how do you run the ball? Look, you can run the ball inside zone. You could run the ball with a toss sweep. You could do a short motion and do a crack and pull toss sweep. You could run counters. You could have both of them on the field at the same time. Hey, maybe what's a backup's name? The guy that's a good runner for Penn State. I'm drawing a blank on his name.
Who's that? Oh, you talking about the transfer that hardly plays? The transfer?
He's like a true freshman. Can we look that up? Do you think you guys could look that up? The backup quarterback for Penn State. He's a young freshman. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on his name, but as we're getting that, you know, I look at it and I say, hey, like maybe you start Singleton in the slot and you run him on a jet sweep, or you bluff the jet sweep and you hand it off to Katron Allen underneath. Yes, Bo.
You said quarter. I thought you said running back. Bo. Yeah.
Yes. So like that, you know, that guy's enough of a wrinkle. I think back to, you know, my time at Michigan. We played Michigan State, and, you know, Wilton Spate was our starter and Shane Morris was, you know, in the rotation.
Shane Morris.
Shane was a fast athlete, and, you know, we would put Shane in for 3 or 4 plays in our biggest games to get him to run, just to show another wrinkle to the defense. So to me, it comes with, as what we said with Marvin Harrison Jr., some of the ways they schemed him open. A short motion into a snap bubble screen. You're not just lining up and running a bubble screen. Like you're dressing it to give yourself an advantage. That's the biggest thing to me, because I think last year we saw, I mean, people keep saying that, hey, what's going on? Are they capable? I know Singleton and Allen are capable of popping runs because I saw it with my own 2 eyes last year. But right now, you know, you have a safety down in the box. Well, how do you block him? A receiver has to short motion, or the O-line has to push. So it's just these little things that are going to make a difference. And I think this is where, you know, an offensive coordinator in Mike Yursich has to sit down and find ways to present the look. It's the old magician. Show them outside zone left, run counter right. You know, like there's ways to, hey, maybe Ohio State's backers fast flow. Well, show them strong and run counter underneath. You know, like there's just, I think creativity can help them. But again, you got to balance too. Like you can't just say that. Do you feel your offensive line is capable of having a deep run package? Do you think they'll execute at a high level against a good defense? Like, I think one thing that I was a little bit shocked is, you know, Penn State, we were looking at the numbers. This is the best they've been in third and fourth in short yardage in terms of completion percentage, their ability to move the chains. And a lot of that was because they were running the ball. And I felt they got away from running the ball even as hard as it was. You know, I think that your best play, you know, they didn't get in the wing T formation.
No, not one time.
So, you know, you could say, well, hey, you know, we think Ohio State's defense is really good in that situation. So maybe you're even matched because that's your best play versus their best. But if you say, hey, you know, we were going to try to attack them passing, clearly the pass game wasn't there. So now you're at a disadvantage. At least you're neutral or close to neutral if you run your best play. It's just little things like that. You know, we could dissect the whole game. I don't know. What do you think?
More than anything else, we can. I think the hard part with the two running backs is that there weren't a lot of opportunities in the third and fourth quarter to get them the ball a bunch. People talked about Marvin Harrison Jr. and getting all these touches. Well, Penn State was going 3 and out every drive. So there's no opportunities to get your playmakers the ball when you're going 3 and out. So it's tough. They do have to find ways to get Allen and Singleton the ball, especially when your receiver room is not as good as you want it to be. Those are your two best playmakers. Yeah. I do think that at the end of the day, it becomes a really good topic of how you scheme up a defense and how you attribute how you attribute touches to your playmakers. And when you don't have elite playmakers, who are those guys that step up and what can you do? For Penn State, it just became ball control throughout the season. And I feel like instead of finding one of those playmakers and making one of those guys step up, they were good all season, all through the first half of the year, just running ball control offense, running the football, and not having any explosive plays. And we heard them defend it to the T, but they never once found that playmaker. They never once tried to find explosive plays down the field, and they were confident and complacent almost just being that ball control offense. You're not going to be a ball control offense and beat Ohio State. So what it taught me, Jake, as an analyst, was that trust the tape that you're seeing, because I was defending the whole time. Penn State's they're going to be explosive on offense when they have to be. They just don't need to be right now. Like, no, Penn State is who we thought they were on offense. They're not explosive. They can't throw the football, and we got exposed on Saturday on a big stage. And we really, both of us last show, were trying to defend it and saying, like, well, they didn't have to be an explosive offense. Yeah. Trust the tape, right? The film never lies.
Hey, man, that's a great point, and it's a lesson. I'm making a mental note for the future, because after about 4 weeks or 5 weeks, your identity is pretty much set. Like, you're chasing a few percentage points of improvement. So you're right. You're right. That's a great point and a great mental note. Just before we wind down, a couple things in summary. I came away this weekend even more impressed with Ohio State. They have two of the best wins in the country, going on the road and beating Notre Dame, beating Penn State with I'm talking 3 premier parts of your team in Ibuka, Henderson, Burke, out. Marvin Harrison Jr. still playing injured. Like, that is an impressive win. I'm really impressed. I also think that I'm not selling Penn State either. That defense that's a championship level defense. I am hopefully optimistic that Aller will improve throughout the season. I mean, this is still a team you're talking a 10-win team, a New Year's Six Bowl. Hey, shoot, who knows what happens the rest of the season? My biggest takeaway is not selling them. So as we talk about coaching, we're at that midpoint in the season. Let's go through our coach of the year, our offensive and defensive player of the years. I'll let you start, and if we're in agreement, I won't add much to it, but who's your head coach of the year?
Yeah, head coach of the year, I think really who's done the most impressive job with the least amount of talent is Greg Schiano at Rutgers. Oof. I think he's got Rutgers at 6-2, playing really good football. They have an identity on both sides of the ball. You know what they're going to be when you turn on the tape. And anytime you're in the Big Ten East and you're 6-2 overall, it's impressive. We'll see how they do the rest of the year. But right now, midway through the season, I think the most impressive coaching job is Greg Schiano.
I think that's a great pick, man. I mean, look, this is head coach of the year doesn't mean most wins. It means where's your expectation and are you exceeding it or not? So, that's a great pick. Look, that's a top 10 Rutgers defense. They got a young quarterback in Wimsatt who's still coming along, and I think he's taking strides. That's on coaching. You give a lot of credit to Coach Schiano. I will say, I think Michigan is doing a great job. So Jim Harbaugh has a case. Ryan Day has a case. I mean, for how much they have their programs continuing to improve with the standard that's set. I like your pick. I like Greg Schiano. How about your head offensive player of the year?
Man, this was tough because I was torn. There's really 3 guys in my mind here for this spot, Jake. It's McCarthy at Michigan, J.J. McCarthy. It's Marvin Harrison Jr., and it's Kyle Monangai at Rutgers right now. Mm-hmm. And those are the 3 guys that I think are have the best case. Blake Corum could be in that conversation as well. But to make it fun, I threw Monangai in there. But
it's a great pick. No, it's a really great pick.
But the guy that I would give it to right now, and the guy that I think will win it, is Marvin Harrison Jr. He's not competing with a quarterback or a running back for the Player of the Year award, right? Where a lot of other non-quarterbacks are competing with their quarterback for that award. Like Corum's competing with J.J. McCarthy for Offensive Player of the Year, right? Who do they give it to? Down the stretch here, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to have to make big plays in big games. And from an impact standpoint, I think he's the most impactful player for his team in the conference. I don't think Ohio State's the same without him. I don't think Ohio State beats Penn State without him. Everyone knows he's getting the ball on 3rd down on big moments, and he still finds ways to get open. It's a testament to him and his coaching staff and Kyle McCord. But there's no one in the conference, including J.J. McCarthy, in my opinion, that impacts their team more when they're on the field than Marvin Harrison Jr. And that's why I think midway through the year he's the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year.
It's really hard to argue against that, man. He has been special, and of course, that's not a hot take. Everybody knows that. He's unbelievably special. He's stepped up in the biggest moments, and you make a good point. You know, J.J. McCarthy is competing with Blake Corum, whereas, look, McCord is reliant. You know, the offense is reliant on Marvin Harrison Jr. I still think, to me, it's JJ. I think this award typically goes to, you know, if your team is rolling as a quarterback and you're leading the way, you know, that award will lean towards that. And I think that continues the trend with JJ. He's taken all the questions that were asked. Can he take a step? He's taken the step. He makes the easy throws look easy, and time again, he's made some special plays. I mean, that touchdown versus Michigan State, where there's an unblocked linebacker right in his face, he avoids the rush on the run, rips another touchdown to Roman Wilson, and what he can do with his feet. So I think I feel pretty good. It's one of those two guys, and I do like your pick from a Nunn guy as well.
I will say that coming on here, I mean, I couldn't just give you two Michigan guys for Coach of the Year and Offensive Player of the Year. So, but I will say, I think McCarthy, if Marvin Harris is 1A, McCarthy's like 1A, right? Like he's like just underneath it. And Jake, we haven't really spent a lot of time talking about McCarthy. His improvement from last year, I was watching some of his last year stuff. He looks so much more comfortable and more accurate as a passer. Like just a lot of growth and improvement. They've done a good job developing him.
I remember watching him when we did the bus tour, and I went to camp and I saw JJ, and I'm like, you know, what really stood out to me is the game looked slow. Like, you know, you have a front side read and a back side read, and I'm looking at JJ go 1 to 2, quickly diagnose it, and then he flips his shoulders and it's 3 to 4, and I'm like, that's not easy to do. There's not many quarterbacks that can do that. So he's been impressive. How about the Defensive Player of the Year as we wind this thing down? Who do you got? This one's a bit more interesting to me.
Yeah, this one was tough. There's a lot of ways to go with this one. I don't feel like anyone's really taken it and ran with it in the conference. There's a lot of kind of up in the air as the season goes on. I'm going to go with Tyler Nubin, the safety at Minnesota. I think he's the best safety in the conference. He's the best,
maybe in the country.
Yeah, one of the best in the country. He's the best run-fitting safety in the conference, maybe the country. It's not even really close. Lays the wood. He really erases half of the field when he's out there. Like he can cover, he can run, he's rangy, and he's physical and can play the run. And the Minnesota defense is good. Behind Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, Minnesota's right there as one of the best defenses in the conference. And the rest of the year, I think Minnesota is in a really good spot. They have Michigan State, Illinois, and Purdue the next 3 weeks. I also have a good buddy of mine as a coach, Andy Reinhardt at Minnesota, and I talked to him earlier this week, and we were talking about his players, and he told me, he's like, dude, I've been around a lot of guys. Tyler Nubin is one of the best practicers, best players in practice that I've ever been around, and just his intensity and what he brings to the table. So I have a lot of faith that Nubin's going to have a great second half of the season.
Man, how important is that to the culture, too? You know, that is culture when your best player is your hardest worker, your best practice player. Everyone else has to fall in line, and he makes some very special plays throughout the season. He's got better hands than some receivers, man.
He does.
I mean, that dude is
three
special.
interceptions. He's got this. Yeah.
and they're not. A couple of them are really special. I'm going with Jay Higgins. He's on Iowa's defense, and he leads the conference in tackles right now. And I think, you know, I just consider where they're at as a program, and I think of the challenge you have no room for error if you're Iowa's defense. He's the leader. He's got about 101 tackles on the year. The next closest on their team is 65. So he's almost plus 40. Has an interception, a couple passes defended, a forced fumble, a fumble recovery. Every week, teams know that if they can just score a little bit on Iowa, they have a real good chance to win the game. And as a linebacker, you got to be the heart of the defense. Everyone else will fall in line. He's the heartbeat. So to me, you know, he jumps out. I think when you lead the conference in tackles, that's always a stat that jumps out. And you're on a defense that I think we all recognize as one of the most dangerous ones in the conference. So that'll be interesting, though. There's a couple other names. I mean, shoot, Adisa Isaac could be on there. You you could go down the list. I like my guy Nash Hutmaker too, by the way. You should watch him from Nebraska.
I will.
That dude's a beast. He won't get it, but that dude's a beast. So cool, man. Well, listen, it's always a pleasure talking to you each week. Can't wait to review next week. Ohio State, Wisconsin. You mentioned Minnesota's in a good place. That's a big game for Wisconsin fans, Ohio State fans, Minnesota fans. The West is wide open. So thank you, brother. See you next week.
Appreciate it, man. See ya.